I was born in West Germany in the town of Rintown. I was born abroad due to my dad being in the British Army and being posted out there when I was born and raised for 3 years. After 3 years, my dad was posted back and we ended up in the town of Colchester. Being unable to find much on Rintown apart from the odd car driving into rivers and creating their own burger for McDonald's, I couldn't find much to talk about and don't remember much, if at all. So Colchester I've always considered the place I grew up, at least for my childhood. A brief history on what was relayed to me as a child living in Colchester about Colchester are: it claims to be the oldest town in Britain. Colchester Castle and Roman Colchester was besieged by Boudicca and more or less burned to ground. Humpty Dumpty the nursery rhyme is said to originate from there, though probably fake. Colchester Garrison, an important military base throughout history and up to now, also where the parachute regiment that my dad was part of are based. These type of histories and opinions were always made apparent to us, and it appears on the surface to show Colchester as an historic, important and patriotic town valued by Britain. This could be made more apparent and drummed home to me because I was brought up on an army estate where no civilians were allowed to live, and attended an army-run school, that these sort of ideals and morals were imposed. However, this only applied for up to primary school, and although I never made it, and this I count myself lucky, moved into a secondary school nearest to us, unlike my brother. This school was Alderman Blacksall, which was not a nice school, with not nice people, and not good grades, which has since been shut down. Recovered somewhat, but due to close this year, with students being transferred and dispersed throughout the rest of the schools. Typing into Google Colchester and searching a bit reveals key insights into the town. For example, Colchester's hospital, branded one of the worst in England after complaints nearly doubled to 3,000 in just a year, as it faces a shortfall of 170 nurses, and Coventry beating Colchester away in football. But moving back to and concentrating on my central theme for this digital story is the concept of army life that I experienced and researched in Colchester, and which was my only understanding until I moved to Northamptonshire and lived in a civilian house and went to a civilian school. This distinctive situation provides and mirrors some of the work of post-colonialism in that it created an artificial boundary in some way, I believe, between British civilians and, in my case, children born on or into an army estate. For one, I didn't have a friend whose parent was not in the army, or indeed know many other people who had friends whose parents were not in the army. Drawing on the work of Edward Said, and specifically stereotypes, contribute to how both boundaries drawn and view each other. For example, as a child growing up on an army garrison, you would most likely call anyone who is not civvy, slang for civilian, and thus when I moved, found out the opposite nickname for me and such would be army brat. This unknowingly at the time creates an almost the us v them mentality between what both are essentially at their core white English individuals, which in some way makes it quite a special case, as no focus is made on race, gender or even nationality. For example, though, we grew up and went to school with children whose nationality was Nepalese and whose parents are based in Britain. However, it is to note that most Nepalese civilians lived in a separate given estate than us. Using as well the work of Henry Tajfel and his theory of minimal group paradigms and how easily one individual will find difference and distinction between each other and potential separate is reinforced. However, from research into my own personal experience, I cannot find a correlation of uncooperative or irrational behaviour being exhibited by both parties, unlike other aspects of culture, for instance, rival football teams, which is worth of note. However, there is an aspect of conforming with our own groups, which is particularly present in this research. Looking on Google Maps at an army estate, and from my time living on an army estate, you can see that there is a shop, a school, maybe a doctor's, and in my past, a pub/social club, which with research is proven to be shut down, perhaps in an effort to stop this conform and othering. But overall, the research shows and personal experience displays a lack of interest and knowledge of values outside an army's life social circle. To use a quote from The Location of Culture by Homi Bhabha, is that culture reaches out to create a symbolic textuality to give the alienating everyday an aura of selfhood, a promise of pleasure. This appears through research and inventory of oneself to be true for an army life on an army estate, where its culture also emerges as a strategy of survival that is only confronted when moved outside would you see uneven value and meaning all shaped towards social survival. This community situated in Colchester goes beyond the mainstream stereotypes of Colchester and its perceived background in general. For example, Essex being associated now with The Only Way is Essex and the stereotypes presented in that. Also, it's provided me with an alternative narrative running through Colchester that might not be first considered. My position as a researcher has been actively involved as it required an inventory of myself being researched as well as an investigation to gain a better, up-to-date understanding of the topic in discussion.